Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure for me really to be for the third time in field around the world and basically share my journey and tell my story over the years of that growth and evolution of the experiences and learnings that I had over that time. Before I start, I agree with Stephen that because the group is still fairly small, to make it as interactive as possible and also to answer your questions, if you may want to already let me know what is it that you're looking for to learn maybe from this time together already now, and I can then make sure of potentially already talk more about it during the intro session, and obviously if we don't get to it, we'll have the Q&A afterwards. So feel free to either unmute yourself or pose the question on Mentimeter so that I'll make sure to cover that. And while you do that, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Can you guys see the slides? Thank you so much, Cynthia, for the nodding. All right, so let me, you see now I haven't checked. Stephen, can you check if there's any notes on Mentimeter of what people want to hear? Because now I'm sharing my screen and I forgot to check.
There aren't at the moment, but I'll keep an eye. I'll interrupt you as
as agreed.
If there's something particular, I'll interrupt you, not just because I'm being rude, but I'm
that's
pleased.
Fine. You cannot be rude. All right, so today we're going to speak about vertical growth and how to unleash that vertical growth in yourself, in your teams, and the organizations that you lead or are part of. And as Steve mentioned, my name is Itziar Canamasas, and if you like to follow me on LinkedIn, I post or have started posted on the topic for the past while, and we'll plan to do so during the year. And I look forward really to learning from you and to have a super great interaction today, right? Because really this is my intention. And my intention is that we leave the session inspired. And also that we finish the session where I've given you the clarity of a potential next step to enable your or your own organization's vertical growth. So to start, what is vertical growth? Vertical growth, in my own understanding, is the conscious application of interventions to help facilitate growth on a very regular basis. We all have had those moments of growth where you finish your day and you feel great because you've grown or you've had someone else grow. But very few of us really reflect to understand what is it that we've done to unleash that growth, to have that impact. Yeah? What environment has been there to help that happen? And most importantly, how can we recreate that environment and that practice to trigger that growth again? So again, vertical growth for me would be to consciously understand that, to create practices and interventions that will help facilitate a more regular application and hence a more vertical growth of yourself, of your teams, or your organizations. And as I said at the beginning, what you'll hear about today is my own journey, right? My own journey on my personal life, my personal growth, as well as my job growth. And when I reflect back, the conscious start of vertical growth for me was when I was the managing director of Bayer Limited in Ireland. Bayer, for those of you that you don't know, it's a life sciences company. As a managing director, my role was 100% focused on unleashing the human capital that was in my organization and deliver value solutions to customers that really they would use, they would value, they would appreciate. Right? At the same time, on a personal level, I had a challenge for the first time in my life that I could remember, I didn't know what I wanted to be next. And that triggered a wonderful journey, a journey of really understanding myself more, a journey of discovering my own purpose. Through discovering my own purpose, also, welcoming and enabling my entire organization in Ireland to identify their own purpose, as well as each team's purpose. I started understanding and connecting myself better and more consciously make interventions in the teams that I was part of to understand each other better, and looking for ways to future-proof myself, as well as the organization I was in charge of, to be more adaptable, to be more connected, to be more customer-centric. Ultimately, a living organization that would be innovative and that also would have people, employees, willing to learn, always aspiring to be the best version that they could be. And what are the enablers of vertical growth? When I reflected back over these 4 years or so, the 3 enablers that comes up to unleash that growth is connection, it's purpose, and it's curiosity. And connection, purpose, and curiosity, in order to maximize the trigger of that growth, in that case, in the Irish organization, we applied interventions at a self level, so at the level of the person, at the level of the team, and at the level of the organization. And why is vertical growth even more important today? Because we live in a world that is very rapidly changing. There's so much data everywhere, so much transformation, digital and non-digital, artificial intelligence. We really have to find ways of being more aware of our surroundings, adapting the way that we appear and act on the world, and be able then to more rapidly, provide those solutions that will make our organizations, ourselves, be more successful. So let us start with each of the enablers of vertical growth. When I reflect back in my life, I've been many times a human doer instead of a human being. Until I did not truly connect to myself, I was not maximizing my growth potential and my well-being. Connecting to myself allowed me to create space and be present. It allowed me to make more mindful choices. I was able to realize sooner when things were not working and adjust myself accordingly. The same applies for teams and organizations. We are much more powerful if we are able to connect with each other. If we know who we are, what are our strengths as a team and as members of that team, and be able ultimately to rely to one another. What you can see in this small word cloud are some of the interventions that ultimately have helped me and my teams enable for that connection. I was super lucky to have a great coach in Ireland, and she introduced me to Enneagram as a tool. Enneagram really allowed me to understand this concept of human doer versus human being, to make sure that I introduce breaks, that I reconnected to myself, that I learned how to do Nixon, which is a concept from the Netherlands, if there's any Dutch in the room today, that ultimately allows us to truly do nothing, or allowed me to truly do nothing and disconnect. And there's many other things that really help us be better connected to ourselves. Do we eat well? Do we sleep well? Do we love ourselves? Do we really rule our impact? Are we having a gratefulness practice? Do we journal as part of that reflection and learning and connectedness to ourselves? If we think as a team or practices to use in an organization, are we doing check-ins and check-outs? Are we having tension meetings that ultimately create that connection and unity and understand us as a team what requires to be done and how can we best solve it, right? There's many other of these practices that when we go into the Q&A, if you feel and would like to know more, we can exchange about my own experience and then hopefully also your own experience. The second enabler is purpose, and I don't have to speak about it in this group. Purpose truly is a wonderful way to help us connect. In my mind, knowing your purpose really helps you focus, it helps simplify, it energizes oneself, and it makes individuals and organizations more successful. When I started the journey of finding my purpose early 2018, I basically started by understanding and journaling what were the activities that energized me. And then I started peeling back the onion. Why were they energizing me? Do they have something in common? And little by little, I was able to come up to what at this current moment in time is my purpose, which is enabling breakthroughs for a better world. The next step, once you find your purpose, what really helped me was starting living my life according to that purpose. And one of the practices that I started doing very early was looking in the morning at my calendar and understanding what are going to be the interventions that I'm going to have in that day where I can best live my purpose, and consciously preparing those interventions to rule my impact, to really have that highest possible impact of living my purpose in that specific interaction. Another practice that was also very useful for me was I use a self-journal, and through that self-journal, I was consciously really looking again at my calendar, applying purpose, having some gratefulness practice, in addition, a reflection time at the end of the day where I was looking at what I had done well and how can I potentially be better next time that I would be in a similar situation, and closing the day again with a gratefulness practice. So truly finding your purpose, having your teams have a purpose, having your organization having a purpose, and ultimately, as Lara said yesterday during her presentation, connecting each person's purpose to one of the roles within the organization that you may be playing in that team will truly even enhance further your human potential, your happiness, and ultimately the impact that you can have in that organization and in the role that you're having. The third enabler is curiosity, and being curious about your surroundings, about learning, about wanting to truly be a bit better every day is really important in order to enable vertical growth. To really see the person in front of you and go through life and interaction, seeing what can I learn from that person, even if that person has a completely different outlook in life. If it's my customer, how do I really know the job that he needs to have done? And if I really understand the job that he needs to have done, then I'm going to be able to provide a better solution, right? What's my ability to reframe in a given situation? Because we live in a world that is truly abundant. So there's always opportunities out of any challenge that life can throw at us, right? And let's just not be stuck because we don't know what decision may be next or the perfect decision. Test learn from it, decide then what's the possible best next step that can I to achieve without really ultimately killing myself or killing the organization, right? Having a growth mindset and setting up an environment as leaders that where people are truly empowered, and enabling that empowerment would be really, really important to achieve that organizational vertical growth. And what I've also tried to do now is in a 3x3 matrix of connection, purpose, curiosity, and then self, team, and organization, try to apply some of the interventions that when I've been leading organizations, either in Ireland or later on then in region EMEA, some interventions that could help then ultimately achieve and be closer to that, to unleashing that more constant growth, right? At the level of the self, again, things like breathing, meditating, journaling, gratefulness are really useful. And it's something that I try to practice on a regular basis. From a curiosity point of view, trying to learn or experiment with at least one new thing per day will allow you definitely to, at the end of the year, have grown and learned and experienced a lot, right? From a team perspective, making sure that you have check-ins and check-outs when you are in the group, having a practice of tension meetings, make sure that roles and responsibilities are clear through governance meetings, doing regular strategy meetings where people will be connected around your purpose, your vision, your values, your goals, but then also how and what activities we're going to do during that cycle to make sure that we're going to get closer to all that purpose and goals that we would have defined. And from a curiosity point of view, within the team, some of the practices you can do is to use, for example, integrated decision-making or co-development activities, retrospectives, and making sure that the team members will be working in an environment that will be empowered. From an organizational point of view, the culture that we will set as leaders will be crucial. I've spoken in the past about culture committees as one potential tool that can be used, but there's also many others. Leading by example as leaders, being good storytellers, and also having the appropriate IT platforms that will help for transparency, connection, visibility of all these data that would enable the connectedness without necessarily all the time having to have that human being on the other side, increasing the agility and the speed of delivery. And some other actions on the curiosity and organization could be learning initiatives, innovation initiatives, and again, making sure that there's a culture of empowerment that will be set up and that ultimately each and every employee will be enabled to be the best version they can be every day and have fun and be happy about it. Right? But then you're going to say, okay, but it's here. Okay, you've been working with setting up these living organizations, doing all of these practices in yourself, but also in the Irish and the EMEA team in these past 4 years. Does it really work? So I basically found this matrix published by McKinsey in 2015. It's very easy to implement, and I haven't used it yet. I'm sure there's other tools, right? It's something that you can do pre-interventions and then do on a regular basis as well, post-interventions to track to see how you're doing, right? And there's 40 attributes that are being measured here. They group them in 4 different buckets. There's the startup bucket, there's the agility bucket, the bureaucracy bucket, and the trust bucket. And as you probably all know, to really be an agile organization, you require not only agility attributes, you will also require some stability attributes. So being efficient and being a reliable organization is really important as well. And what you can see here is that, and it's small, I know, but I want you to see the trends, that either in Ireland or here you see two of the examples of two collectives in region EMEA, we had not only impacts on agility, and you see on the right the key attributes at the end of the interventions and when they were measured, but most importantly, in those groups that were already set, the trapped attributes were really reduced. And that for us was super important. All of a sudden in Ireland, we didn't have any empire building, we didn't have, politics and local tribes and finger pointing that was being measured anymore. And we were super happy about that. Yeah. So now to conclude, one question you may have is, okay, Itziar, you've given us all of this. If I want to start, where do I start, right? The easiest thing, if you just start to aim to learn and try something new every day, then you're already going to be on a path of conscious growth, right? I'm sure that you all have found your purpose being here in Teal, but if you haven't yet, make sure that you're discovering your purpose, and not only discovering, but also applying it on a daily basis so that you're able to roll more your impact, to be more purposeful and ultimately enable more of that growth on a daily basis. And if you haven't done the exercise of finding your purpose, one good way to start the work for me is basically journal what gives you energy and then integrate that in your reflection time. And that's an exercise you can do as a person, and you can also enable each and everyone in your organization to do that, and ask also all of your teams to do that, as well as obviously, probably your organization will also have already a purpose. If it doesn't, then you should start there, right? The second thing, either do a profiling exercise, or, because you probably would have already done some, review the results, yeah? Sit down with them. If possible, have a coach to support you on the exercise. It was really helpful for me to be able to do that. And if you're not able to, there's also wonderful books that can help you a little bit more. But if you can, my recommendation is to have a coach. For me, the Enneagram was transforming. The Strength Finder, I find it super good tool to do with teams, because I've also applied something else, which is then ask each of the team members to go back to their lives, map the moments in life when they think they gain that strength. And then if they feel comfortable with, share the moment in life when they gain that strength with the group. And it was very powerful, for example, for me, when someone was saying that they learned to be more resilient because they were bullied at school, right? You would never think or know that that person would have been bullied at school, right? But it allows you not only to get to know that person, but to get to know more of that person that you're working right now, because you've learned about their life journey. And the third thing that really has worked very well for me in the different teams, where I've applied some of the practices that I've shown before, is to have the team taste the chocolate of what it means to have a tension meeting facilitated. From all the practice I've had, the tension meeting is the one that creates more of the aha moment. So if you have an agenda where you basically have the check-in, then you have a facilitator that creates the agenda of tensions and then basically manages the tensions, defining and identifying the best next step. That truly, in my experience, has been a wonderful way of making teams curious about what is it about, and then ultimately be more open towards going through the journey of applying whatever framework you've chosen to apply in your teams and organization. So with that, I look forward to your questions and contributions, and hopefully there was at least one thing that was new for you today, and you've been able then to achieve and have a check mark on your growth for today then. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Itziar. A great conversation. Thank you. We've already got quite a few questions that have appeared in Mentimeter already. So I'll start working through those in just a second.
Yeah.
For anybody that has joined late or doesn't have the link, I'll just pop that in the chat again so you can take a look at the questions that have been asked or ask your own along the way. So I'll make a start with the one that's the highest voted in here, if that's okay by you, and we'll go from there.
Sure.
It's not too awkward, don't worry. So the first one is, your journey started when you did not know what you wanted to do or to be for the first time. What motivated others on your team to embrace the journey who might not have been in the same situation?
Yeah, and that's a super question, right? And sorry for the answer, I would say it depends, because it depends on the person itself, and ultimately everyone will have different triggers and will have different opportunities or let's say different triggers for enabling that growth, right? In my experience, doing this practice of the tension meeting is one good way of making people curious about what this is about, right? For other people, going through the journey of understanding the purpose and start applying the purpose work for them. For others, it may have been going through the strength finder exercise and enabling for that connection, right? Not everyone will have and drink from the same cup of tea, but there's multiple interventions that ultimately will enable for people then to start connecting. And once they start experiencing that the meetings or the collectives that we're in that are more functional, that they have more fun at it, that they are contributing more, that they see more outcomes, then automatically they start coming more and more on board. Yeah? And I don't know if that helped answer the question, but feel free to ask further.
So who put that question there in the first place? Did that answer your question? Or
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
sorry. Thank you, Itziar. I put the question in just because I thought I work with a lot of people who are very, very doing oriented, and it sounds like, you know, the answer was actually it's what you might even be vertically developing unconsciously, but you're still doing it through the experience, and you don't necessarily have to convince people that they want to be on the journey. You're just bringing them along or inviting them along, and that's good enough. That works. So yes,
wow,
you definitely answered.
That's a super, but that's a super, right? In a sense of, I'll think more about it. So it's the idea you're giving me is by bringing them through the practices, even if they are not maximizing, you're putting and giving them frameworks that will help them grow more often, right? Even though they may not be at the expert level like other people that really are more willing to go through that. Oh, I like it very much. Huh? Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, so the next question. Could you please say a bit more about what a facilitated tension meeting looks like?
Yes. I will tell you what a facilitated tension meeting is in my world, right? I'm sure that there's other practices of doing that. We worked with a company that it's called Fabric when I was going through that journey. And Fabric has a framework that we relabeled Empowered Ways of Working. The original name is Adaptive Governance, right? And as part of adaptive governance, they have this framework of tension meetings. And what an agenda of this tension meeting would look like is you would have the facilitator have a check-in. And depending on the facilitator, they can do super fun things like, you know, what's the weather? That's not so fun. Yeah, what's the weather like? Or let's say you have puppies or pictures, and then people identify themselves with the feeling that they're coming into that group. Yeah, and just having that really nice, talk already allows for people to connect and then start the meeting in a good atmosphere, right? Then you would then have typically, because you would have had a strategy meeting before, you would then go through the KPIs according to the key areas of focus that you would have identified and see what progress you would have made since the last time you met. Then the facilitator would then open it up to the group and would then say, okay, does anyone have any tensions? And a tension means something that either they would like to share, or where they've seen a problem emerge, or where they're going to need maybe the brains of the collective to be able to come for a solution. And typically the facilitator just collects the topics, only one word, and make sure first that you're creating the agenda without the explanation of what the topic is. And then basically goes one by one to everyone that has posted that topic, allows them to explain, and then facilitates to really only find the next best step. So if it's only for information, you will close the tension probably in that meeting. But if it's more for discussion, you would then define the next best step, which is maybe meeting with Lynn and Stephen to discuss how to resolve that tension in the next meeting. You put it as an action point, and then in the next operational tension meeting, you would then bring back and give an update if required as part of the tension. And then once you've done all of this facilitated, then the facilitator would basically do a checkout to see how people are feeling, if there's a mini retrospective, depending on the day, and then basically close the meeting. So it's super efficient, 1 hour. I've had agendas of tension meetings or operational meetings different depending on the group that I belong to. So when I was in the pharma leadership team in Ireland, it was different than when I was in the oncology commercial team in the region, or different from how my operational day-to-day marketing team used to be. Yeah, you end up tailoring the agenda depending on the group, who is part of the group, and what would work best at that point in time.
Itziar,
So I hope it helped answer the question. Yeah.
can I ask a question?
Of course. We have,
Yesterday we had Tim, I think, used the same word, tension meetings. And he said that and he showed a sort of template. So he had a big Excel file with, he identified like 100, I don't remember, 120 different type of tensions that you can have in a team. But then he had on the other axis different levels. And he said, I've used the non-violent communication approach, which means there are 4 steps. And at a point in time when you have, let's say, a conflict with someone, you need at least to express your needs, right? And so he has formally identified a lot of tension, different types of tensions. They can be on the way of working, they can be financial, they can be whatever. And he has described a sort of way out. Way out means, how do we solve the tension? So when you say the meeting is only 1 hour, in general, when you have a conflict, you don't solve the problem in 1 hour. And there are different ways of solving. For example, you can explain what is the difference of point of view, and that's it. Or you can accept it. This is already another level, and you can have different levels, or you can solve it by doing something. And when we talk about, let's say, teamwork, we say you need to have trust between people. So people are convinced that everyone is working for the good of the team. And then you enter in the conflict phase. Part of the conflict management could be the tension meeting. But then someone this morning also used the word primus inter pares. So you need somewhere to go and act. No, all people have a different view in the team, let's say. So, but people have a place to express their view, but then you still need to take an action and to take a decision. So you need to decide, is it a consensus? Is it an average of all the people? Is it the decision of the team member, of the team, of the manager, let's say, or whoever it is? Because at a certain point, you need to act and do something.
Yeah. So it depends. I will describe how we use it. Yeah. We define tensions as literally a tension in your, in your breast, in your heart area, right? Yes. and then I don't need to put list of what a tension is. You would know, and you will have many different tensions, right? And then the purpose of those meetings are not to resolve necessarily the tensions there, but to identify the next best step for the people that you have the tension with, to figure it out, and then come back if required to the group to then ultimately have that tension solved. Yeah. But it's not the purpose of, let's say, a tension or a triage meeting to resolve everything, because then you end up going into maybe your tension, Michelle, it's only between you and me, and you don't have to have the other 8 people listening to how we're going to solve that question, because then you're wasting time, you're losing the energy of the group, etc., etc.
No, what I mean is that imagine, for example, that we have 10 people are talking about, we have issues with resource management.
Yeah.
So some people have different views, and some people talk about budget, some people talk about the work that has to be done. So we need, as a team, to resolve that conflict, because let's say the members of the team, they all have some sort of complaints about the resources allocated for doing their job. So this is not between one people, it's a team that somewhere recognize or not that there is a tension. And then some people have a bigger conflict, some people less, but somewhere we have to decide, is not between 2 people, it's a team issue that we have put on the table. And understand that it's already good to have a conversation about, and to put on the table the fact that there is a tension. That is very clear. The table that I was mentioning.
So let me, yes. So the way to solve that, and apologies, you wouldn't then solve that tension during that meeting. The action, the best next step, maybe if it involves all the team, let us schedule some time together and let us apply maybe some integrated decision making, co-development, whatever other technique it is. But it's a separate meeting that you're setting up to solve that tension.
Okay.
You wouldn't do it during that meeting.
Yes.
What we typically did is also we reserved on a weekly basis. So we had 1 hour to do our strategy meeting, our tension meeting. And then we always reserved a half an hour after in 2 15-minute slots. Okay. So if the 2 15-minute slots were not given, we could already use that half an hour after to solve a big tension that the team would have had. And if not, then we would schedule an additional one, right? So I hope that helps, Michelle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry for being a bit.
No, super.
Thank you for going into it.
Yeah.
Very, very briefly before I move on, it's about discovering tensions often, much more than it is solving them, if people don't talk about them. And just one, I'll stick it in chat, but if you haven't read Brave New Work or got a copy, there's a good list of tensions and practices in there. So if a team aren't talking about tensions, it's a really easy facilitated exercise. You can even buy the cards, I won't bother showing you, but you can discover some tensions from which you can then begin to kind of flex that muscle a bit.
Super. I didn't know the book, so thank you.
It's a good read, and it's got a really it's Brave New Work by Aaron Dignan. Oh, if you've got to, I'll pop it in. Excuse me, sorry, I'll let you go back. The next question in the list was, how did you deal with people falling back into old patterns and thinking structures?
This is also a brilliant question. And I think here, the figure of a facilitator is crucial. So today I didn't talk about it. I talked more about it in prior TL around the world, but in my experience, for it to work, is you need to have 2 key roles defined. You're going to have the facilitator role, and you're going to have the bookkeeper role, and then obviously there's going to be the lead of that circle. In addition, as part of your strategic meeting, you're going to be identifying which are going to be the roles required to achieve that purpose and those key initiatives that you would have want to meet. And if you have a good facilitator and the facilitator is coached, then ultimately you will be able to keep the discipline, for lack of a better word, the framework, and making sure that we're all advancing in our practice and making the most of those interactions. And then also, it is very important when in whatever cycle times you've defined to do a retrospective meeting. so that you pause and you digest. How are we doing? Is there anything else that we can do differently in order to improve the way that we work? Yeah, and that's also another helpful practice than to integrate.
Sorry to step in here, Stephen. I posed the question, so I was wondering, because I was thinking behind the question of the safety structures that people need. And the need for that is also very differentiated. We were just talking about it in the fire chat talk with Bodo Jansen, which was in German, unfortunately. So of course, I get it. It's the facilitator's role that is very important to hold it in the meeting and to do whatever is necessary in the meeting. I get that. But I wonder if there needs to be more to deal with the different needs for safety and security that people have.
Oh, yes.
And I was wondering to exchange a bit on that.
Absolutely, and thank you for clarifying the question, Nicole. Going back to the enablers, right? Connectedness, yeah, being connected is crucial. And for me, being connected is ultimately what you were just talking about. Yes. If you truly connect with each other, that means you probably are going to be creating an atmosphere of trust where people would be open to share how they are in a given moment, where you're checking in, where you're creating that environment that will enable for people then to truly be who they are, and not just basically fear failure or fear that they are not perfect or that they are not maybe their best self on a given day, right? So I couldn't agree more. And here's some of examples of things that I've done. One very powerful was the one I was mentioning before with the lifeline and understanding where everyone gained their strengths. Another one that was very helpful for us as a group was a vision board. So going through the process of creating our own vision boards and understanding what vision everyone has so that you are able then to ultimately relay more to it. Purpose exercise and understanding each other's purpose, and then also helping each other understand how could potentially a role that you may have in the organization be linked to your purpose so that you are even more fulfilled when coming to work. So those are 3 examples that you could apply to help you achieve what you were achieving. And as a leader, obviously being a servant leader, right? Not a manager, really being part of the community and not in this pyramidal structure. Leading by example would be really, really important, and sharing this honesty with the team would really be very helpful in my experience to achieve that trust.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and we move on, in which case there's a couple of questions then about the Enneagrams. The first one, and I'll leave you open to this, is would you share which Enneagram type you are? If you're willing to do that, please do.
What do you think? I will. But maybe who asked the question?
Gemma.
It was me. Yeah. I'm perfect.
So Gemma, which number do you think? And I know we're not numbers, yeah. But what do you think is the main number that I would have?
Well, I think it's number 5, maybe. Very structured, very organized, very.
Okay. No, I'm number 3 actually.
Okay.
So that was number 3s are human doers and forget to be human beings. So because we're just doing and go, it's then sometimes not so easy to pay attention to ourselves. And sometimes because we're already so far ahead, make sure that we're bringing everyone also along and paying attention to others. That's why for me, it's always super important to make sure that I find time to connect. And that's what I've grown lots in the last 4 years, right? That I make sure that I'm bringing people along, because I know that that's one of the things that I need to work on. Then that I apply my number 9. So basically that I do Nixon, yeah, that I take rest, that I slow down, right? And then also that I integrate number 6, which is questioning my decisions, because again, sometimes I go so fast that it's important for me then also to activate that 6 and you know, aim to ultimately, hopefully, be above all when I'm ultimately balanced and everything works perfectly, to be the best possible leader I can be. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
You may have just answered that. I should have asked you both at the beginning. The next question was, in which way did the Enneagram analysis open your eyes about your journey? And I think you began
Here
to
you
touch
go.
on that
I
a
just
bit.
answered. Yeah, I just answered.
I think so.
It allowed me to connect to myself. I couldn't describe it differently.
Very good. Okay. So if we consider and cater for the need for individual approaches in different teams, how would you describe the frame that is the same for each, where everybody feels or sees the same?
So may I ask a clarification question to whomever has asked it? Yeah. Are you understanding if there's a potential operating model that we could apply across teams as a starting point? Is this the question?
I was asking the question. Of course, I understand that. Well, what I mean with the frame above, be it now purpose of the company or operating, managing model, business structures, whatever it is, I know that those things are there. But how would you describe it in other words? What is it where everybody, how different they might be, what is it where they all come together? What is there? What characteristic does it have? Because surely it's not the numbers of a financial plan.
No, if you ask me, in essence, the 3 enablers is what I was discussing, is making sure that in whatever forum you are, if it's your own self, your team, or your organization, that you're connected, that you define your purpose and apply your purpose, and that you should set up ways of trigger curiosity across the organization. So the matrix, the 3x3 matrix that I showed, that's for me the essence that when applied can help you establish and lead living organizations, but then also hopefully, you know, trigger that growth path at the personal level or at the team level. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Nicole? Nicole?
Yes.
It was a good question. What do you have in mind? How do you think that you can, because it's always a dilemma a little bit, because we want to, as you said, to have to cater for individual needs. And then I'm a system person, so I try to bring system that somewhere everybody is going to embark on, and you see that it's difficult. So how do you see this solving these two different way of looking at things?
I hadn't solved it for myself in my head. I do believe that the purpose of the company or the team, however high you define it, is crucial. And one thing that Itziar now said added another point to it for me, which is the curiosity. So if I bring curiosity to the world around me, which is then my team, my company in this regard, then I can look beyond what is my individual frame. Then I have the ability and the willingness to see that there is somebody else looking slightly different, but maybe on the same thing. So I have also a curiosity then to other people. So that's a new thought now that I just got, and I would add it to the general purpose thing. And it brings me back to a thought that I had in the fireside chat with Bodo Jansen, that what are we giving our energy for? So, which is also a big purpose, but also what do we want to achieve with our doings, with with why we're getting out of bed in the morning and why we're doing this task. So this the sense and the drive behind what we do, and we seem to come together in a team to do similar things. So then it comes also together. But sorry for that, I'm so confused talking about it. That was exactly why I asked the question, because I have a bit of a blob in my head of several things, and I'm trying to verify it for myself.
But you said,
did it help you, Michel?
if I may, just one, if Stefan allows me. Yes.
Yeah, just a minute, please, Michel.
Very quick.
Thank you.
Because you use different frames, so of course you have your individual frame. So it's extremely difficult to know the frames of all the different people, and they will all have different frames. So this is good, and that's somewhere you said there are different levels of frame. So I go beyond my individual frame. I have the team frame, but actually you have the company frame, you have the society frame. There are multiple layers of frames. It's just that at a certain level, for example, in your own function, so in your own team, you are going to define some sort of frame that might be or not the same than another function within the company. So at different levels, there are different principles and rules that are trying to help the people somewhere to work as a company or as a team or as an individual. And of course, there are always frictions at all levels. It's just that there is an acceptable gap that everyone can handle in his own area. Sometimes the gap is too big, and then you leave the company, for example. Or, but yeah, it was a good question anyway.
Yes.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay. A couple more questions. We're finishing at 22 and then we'll move to the gardens. So time for at least one of these questions. Perhaps a bit more practical. Do we have to start with ourselves and then work back from there on a team and organizational level? Or can this work backwards? Better connections at work resulting in a better understanding of ourselves?
At the end of the day, I don't think there is a right or wrong. Right? It's what works for you at that given point in time or what allows you to grow in that path. And that path is a never-ending path of growth, right? So if the way you enter it and you gain consciousness that you need to go and connect to yourself is through a team building exercise where someone is applying to you the strength finder that makes you curious, and you meet a coach or another person that tells you that maybe going into the journey of connection is something that really would be helpful for you. And I don't think that is right or wrong. It's just what is right for you at that given point in time.
Thank you. Okay. And a final question then. What has been the most challenging aspect of your vertical growth journey so far?
So the most challenging aspect, and going back to the Enneagram question that I had before from Gemma, is not to overdo it, right? So again, I'm a human doer, and so, oh my God, there's so many opportunities for growth. So look, I can do that and that and that and that and that and that, and then you end up getting spent, and your energy is spent because you're not replenishing and regenerating. So I would say that's for me has and is and probably will be the toughest part of it. And going back to that saying, look, it's fine if it's only one thing at a time. And you know what? If one day you don't grow, then you don't, then that's also fine. You're going to have the next day. And that's probably the answer I will give to our question, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Itziar. So just a final thing, I would suggest on behalf of the whole room, thank you ever so much for sharing your thoughts in the presentation.